Let's be honest, nothing ruins a camping trip faster than dead batteries and no backup. No matter what kind of a camper you are, having a portable power station can honestly make life so much easier. But in most cases, people end up choosing a power station that either doesn't meet their necessity, comes with a shorter battery lifespan, maybe too slow charging and whatnot. And since we've tried, tested, and used a whole bunch of them on this channel, we figured it's time to talk about 10 things you really need to consider before buying a portable power station. So, without any further ado, let's begin. All right, first things first, take a moment to think about what you actually plan to run when you're out there. Is it just your phone, camera batteries, and a lantern, or are you counting on powering a fridge, running a CPAP through the night, or keeping a laptop going for remote work and a bit of downtime? We'd suggest checking the wattage on each device. Add it up and factor in how long you'll be off-grid before your next recharge. Then look for a power station with enough watt hours to not just match that, but give you enough headroom. We've had trips where we calculated just enough on paper only to wake up to a drained battery and no coffee, no lights, and no signal. That's when we learned that the buffer isn't actually luxury, it's what keeps your trip from turning into a slow, powerless grind. Let's be real. Nobody enjoys dragging a chunky power station across uneven ground just to get a phone charged. There's always a trade-off. The bigger the battery, the heavier the unit. Now, before you flood the comments with, "Thank you, Mr. Obvious," hang on. That weight might not be an issue if you're car camping, but when you're hauling gear on foot, every extra pound starts to feel personal. That's why it helps to look past just specs and think about the practical stuff. How easy is it to carry? Does it have a decent handle or wheels? Can it handle a bit of bouncing around in the trunk or being set down on rough ground without babying it? We've had setups that technically checked all the boxes, but once we hit the trail, every step made us rethink the choice. Over time, we found that the sweet spot is something compact enough to move around easily, yet tough enough to handle real use, especially when you camp for a shorter time. But in case you camp for a week or even more, we'd suggest getting a power station with proper wheels to haul it effortlessly. A power station's only as good as your ability to recharge it. That's something you really start to feel when the battery's down to single digits and there's no outlet in sight. Some smaller units rely solely on wall charging, while others support solar, though you'll want to double check what's actually included because the panels often aren't. And depending on the weather, solar might not keep up like you'd expect. Oh, not sure if you watched the video, but we even used one unit that had a small built-in solar panel. We knew that panel wouldn't help much, just trickle charging at best, but gave it a shot anyway. The key here, we'd say, is having options. The more ways you can recharge, the fewer chances you'll get caught with a dead unit and no backup plan. Just make sure you understand the actual recharge times. If it takes all day to top off, that's going to limit how flexible you can be on the move. And if you're leaning towards solar, look for a power station with MPPT support. Believe it or not, it does make a huge difference when you're counting on the sun, and every watt matters. We'd say one of the easiest mistakes people make is not thinking through what they'll actually need to plug in. Don't get stuck in the woods with 3 devices to charge and only one USB port staring back at you. We've been there, and believe it or not, it's no fun playing who gets power first. Make sure the power station offers the right mix of ports: USB-A for the basics, USB-C for PD and fast charging, AC outlets for small appliances, and DC outputs for those camping-specific tools. If you're sharing your power station with friends or family, we've found that having extra ports is never overkill. It's more like a peace of mind. In our opinion, it's also smart to look at the total output rating, not just the number of ports. We've seen people plug everything in at once, only to overload a smaller station and trip its limits. Matching that total output to how you'll actually use it makes the difference between smooth charging and a frustrating game of unplugging and rotating devices. These days, most reputable brands have stepped away from old-school lead-acid batteries, and honestly, with good reason. Lithium-ion, and more so lithium iron phosphate, have proven to be more reliable and far better at holding up through repeated charging cycles. We've used both types over time, and the difference in long-term performance is pretty clear once you've put them through a few seasons. Lithium iron phosphate in particular hits a solid balance. From what we've seen, this battery type offers far better stability, handles temperature swings more smartly, and lasts noticeably longer without that slow dip in capacity. Now, you will find lithium-ion power stations within a much affordable price range, but keep in mind that lithium iron phosphates are a much safer option than lithium ions. Also, the initial cost might look higher for lithium iron phosphate, but on the contrary, they can perform in extreme weather conditions and last much, much longer than lithium ions. So, yeah, if you're investing for the long haul, especially for mixed season use, it's a battery chemistry well worth considering. Now, this is one of those things you don't really think about until something goes wrong. But in our opinion, safety should never be an afterthought when choosing a power station. Built-in protection against short circuits, overheating, overcharging, and overloads should always be considered must-haves. The better brands are usually upfront about this, and we've learned to always double-check the specs before buying. Another thing we'd suggest keeping an eye out for is pure sine wave AC output. It might not seem like a big deal at first, but for sensitive electronics, medical gear, or even high-draw lighting setups, it can be the difference between smooth performance and frustrating glitches. And while a built-in flashlight or SOS beacon isn't something we'd consider essential, we've had nights at camp where having it built in seemed easier to each when needed. Small touch, but useful when it counts. I ain't saying that it has to survive a drop off a cliff, but if you're heading into real backcountry, build quality matters more than you think. Feel the materials, check for shock protection, and see how well the ports are sealed. Water resistance is rare, but good dust protection and proper plug covers go a long way. And if you're planning to camp in extreme heat or cold, take a second to look at the listed operating temps. We've had gear refuse to charge on frosty mornings, and that's not something you want to learn the hard way. One of the best parts of camping is the quiet. And in our experience, most power stations do a good job preserving that. But some models with active cooling fans can get a bit noisy under load, especially in the heat. If you're planning to run a CPAP, fridge, or anything overnight, it's worth checking reviews for noise mentions. Trust me, a constant drone sound is the last thing you want when you're trying to rest. With so much slick marketing out there, we'd say it's smart to stick with brands that have proven themselves. Names like Anchor, Goal Zero, Bluetti, EcoFlow, and Jackery tend to earn consistent trust from campers and off-grid users alike. And don't just rely on product pages. Independent reviews and YouTube creators often talk about things the brochures don't. If you spot repeated issues or early failures, that's usually a sign to move on. For the last tip, we'd say it's easy to get drawn toward massive power stations with specs you'll rarely need and weight you'll definitely feel. The key here is matching the price to your actual use. For solo trips or weekend getaways, something in the $200 to $400 range usually handles lights, phones, and maybe a camera or laptop just fine. For families or more power-hungry setups, higher-end models make sense, but of course only if you know what you're paying for. And if a brand feels too cheap to be true, in most cases they are. That usually means cut corners on battery quality or safety, and that's not something you want to learn the hard way when you're far from the grid. So yeah, a portable power station can quietly become one of the most useful things you bring to camp. Keeping essentials running, handling unexpected needs, or just adding a bit of comfort. Focus on what actually fits your setup. Test your gear beforehand, and you'll be ready for just about anything off the grid. Thanks for watching. Feel free to reveal your thoughts in the comments section and share this video if you find it helpful. And to know more about outdoor products, reviews, and buying guides, you can visit our website, gooutdoorzone.com.